So hi everyone, my name is Primož Kovačič. I'm a co-founder of Spatial Collective based in Nairobi. Just a little bit about my background. I'm a geospatial engineer with masters from George Washington University in media and public affairs, sort of in strategic political communication. And sort of what Spatial Collective is doing is also sort of my personal path and the path of a lot of people here that we've been sort of following. So very briefly, this presentation, I'm going to briefly describe what Spatial Collective is and what it does, some of the projects that we've been involved in, and then one of our recent projects just for you to see how we operate, sort of. So Spatial Collective is a social enterprise. It's a technology consulting company based in Nairobi, Kenya, and we are, if you want to bracket us and put us into a little bracket, you could say that we are an ICT for D company, for good or for bad. We have team members coming from various backgrounds and fields, from computer scientists to people doing GIS to community workers, from activists on the ground. We have a staff of 15 people at the moment, and you know, we're representing 3 different continents and various different backgrounds. Some of our partners and clients are Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, the World Bank, UN, DAI, Qatar Foundation. There's still some room there for interviews, so don't be shy. Some of the services that we offer are data collection and analysis. What you're seeing right now is the platform that we set up for African Institute for Health and Development for tracking crime in Korogocho, which is considered still as one of the most violent slums in Nairobi. So they asked us if we can help them figure out how they can report on certain instances of crime, to see where the clusters are, who are the perpetrators and victims, and so on. We have... Yes, I'm sorry.
See the first slide.
Which one?
The logo.
The logo?
Yeah,
you're still there.
We have there. Yeah.
You're still here.
We have the same problem.
So you need to communicate to me what do you see right now.
The first slide, the Spatial Collective logo. Yeah.
What about now?
Now we see exploring trends through space, place, and time.
Okay, so now you see the team in a room.
Yes. Yeah.
Now you see the clients, partners.
Perfect.
Okay, so this is the list of some of the recent partners and clients that we have. And now you see the platform that we built for crime monitoring.
Yep.
Okay, good. So, so I already explained what this is about. It's so the interest of this. This was a World Bank funded project. The interest was to see whether certain community initiatives changed how crime, sort of the patterns of crime through date or time or months or different locations and so on. We have some for-profit, some private companies which asked us to do market research, for example. This particular case is sort of a bottom of the pyramid company wanted to open a shop in Kenya, somewhere in Nairobi. They gave us a profile of their usual customer, and we provided them with information where's the best place to open shop in order to maximize their profits. So we used various data sets, which some of them we collected ourselves, and some of them we just got from, Kenya Open Data and so on. to do this analysis. Recently, we started working more on technology for monitoring and evaluation. We are currently involved in, we are a technology lead on a Digital Jobs Africa project for the Rockefeller Foundation. So we're building an information management system for them. They're investing into 6 different countries in Africa on, youth employment, or organizations and companies which are dealing with youth employment. They're trying to cut youth unemployment in Africa. So we're working with 2 other monitoring and evaluation companies in setting up this management system for them. Another one which we recently did was for Plan International, where we set up a system for monitoring the quality of water points in an area which was recently struck by severe droughts here in Kenya. But it's definitely some sort of an emerging also service for us recently. All of this includes consulting. So we do a lot of consulting work concerning technology for development, and this particular case is together with DAI and the World Bank, we helped set up a Geographic Information Systems unit in Edo State, Nigeria. So Nigerian state wanted to have a unit where they would be able to collect certain data and do some basic analysis and basing outputs, like knowing how to use OpenStreetMap, how to use quantum GIS. So they were very interested in lowering the cost. So we were training them in all this open software stuff. And now I hear they have an office with computers, and they all have jobs, and yeah, they're collecting GIS data for Edo State. Are we still together?
Yep.
Yep.
Good. So often what happens also, I'm still on the profile of the company. Often organizations come to us where they have sort of like a data overload. So they collect data for months, years, sometimes decades, and then realize that all their data is in different spreadsheets, is in PDF files, Excel files, different types of documents. So they come to us and we help them sort of consolidate all these data sets and present them in a nice, presentable fashion, help them analyze the data and so on. And we also, last but not least, we also build applications. We have a technical team who can build various types of apps. So this one is for Nairobi Water and Sewage Company. So Nairobi Water and Sewage Company is interested in expanding their services throughout Nairobi, and obviously one of the targets are informal settlements because Nairobi City Council has a plan sort of for Nairobi, and that is to include informal settlements into the wider city planning. And so they wanted a sort of an app or a platform where people can have an easy access to information about how to connect to water services and sanitation services. They could find their house, the information, they could gather information about where is the nearest connection to water or sewage point, how much it would cost them, who is the contact person, and things like that. So we did a pilot project in Kibera, and at the moment we are applying, we did it in collaboration with Nairobi Water and Sewage Company and Kunki Design Initiative, and at the moment we're applying for a Nairobi-wide sort of grant to scale it up to the whole city, so anyone can use it. So this is a little bit of a background of Spatial Collective. So you see we're heavy on technology, but we're also heavy on community work. Most of our guys come from neighborhoods here in Nairobi, and their background is actually not technology, but it's community development. And so one of the projects that is our in-house project at the moment, and I want to talk about that because I feel like you you'll get a better idea about, what is some of the processes that we go through, trying to understand technology and how it's being used by various actors or stakeholders in the country. So we propose to our partner in this project is Gates Foundation, or Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we propose that we're going to build a smart community. So what is a smart community? So for us, a smart community is a community which communicates, first of all, which communicates to itself or through different nodes within the community. So a smart community is also a community which has access to information and data which is relevant for its development. And what we said, and this is sort of coming from the smarter cities approach in the Western countries, is that we want to build a community in an informal settlement where people can express what their needs are and build sort of an aggregate platform where we connect the citizens straight to the service providers or the government, right? And see whether we can solve some of the major issues that informal settlements are facing. So it sort of touches on technology and community mobilization, collective action, informal settlements, communication, and something called areas of limited statehood, right? So I'll just briefly explain what I mean by areas of limited statehood. But so usually the Western notion of a state is that the state is either fully consolidated or it's a failed state, right? And most states fall somewhere in between. So the fully consolidated states would be Scandinavian states, and the failed states would be DRC, or maybe Somalia is the best example right now. But I believe the Berlin Frye Institute came up with a term called area of limited statehood, which means that all countries in the world experience areas of limited statehood in terms of it can be either territorial, like the slums in Nairobi, for example, or anywhere else in the world. Okay, so the area of limited statehood, I'm sorry, let me backtrack a little bit, is a place where the state loses control over decision-making, sort of over the means of violence, or over implementing decisions. So this can be a territorial area within a state like the slum. It can be a temporal area like the typhoon in Philippines, for example, wiped out a certain part of the state, and the state for a while lost control over that particular area. It can be a policy. The state does not protect a certain asset or a certain people. Or area of limited statehood can touch also on the social aspect, which means that the certain population within the country is not protected, or something like that. So Nairobi represents an area of limited statehood in a sense that the state does not control the means of violence or decision-making. It is disconnected from the city grids or from the rest of the state, for that matter. And as we will see in this instances, different governance modalities, as it's called, emerge. So governance can be either by the state, or it can be with the state or without the state. But slums, for example, is a combination of governing without the state and sometimes together with the state. So, for example, there's no service provision, or at least there is none provided by the state in the areas of limited statehood, like sanitation. So the government doesn't provide sanitation to certain populations. The government doesn't build schools in certain areas. They do not build health facilities. So all of these services, which are usually associated by the state, are done by someone else, which is either an NGO or it's some sort of a self-organized entity. So we were interested, so we said, why can't we build smarter communities in an area like this? You know, they have access to mobile phones, right, and the internet, at least we assumed. So But we said in order to do that, we need to do some research first. So we were specifically interested whether ICTs, like we assumed, are available in these areas, and we believe that rise in availability and accessibility of ICTs will allow certain non-state actors to fill in some of the governance void which is left by the absence of the state, right? So our assumptions was that information and communication technologies are prevalent even among the most marginalized communities. So these are the communities which live on $2 per day, right? But we said ICTs, as we see it, they're as widespread as anywhere else. They're being used for provision of public services, at least we saw that, and they can fill in some of the governance void. So if we wanted to build some sort of a smart system around these communities, we needed to see whether this is actually true. So what we did was we did a household survey. We were specifically focusing on waste management, but we could do any other service delivery, right? So we did household survey, stakeholder survey, and we did mapping of all of the points of interest to see what can this data actually tell us. So the way we did the survey was, well, there was a problem. How do you do a household survey in an area which doesn't have street addresses, and how do you randomly select households in an area which doesn't have street addresses? So we're still together?
Yep.
So what we did was we superimposed a grid on top of the satellite imagery of the area, and each grid cell was sort of the same size as the house. We randomly selected 1,000 grid cells, which we transferred them into the GPS points, uploaded them to the GPS units, and we used an Android phone to set up a questionnaire. So our surveyors went out and they collected the survey on an Android phone, sent it into the database as soon as the survey was completed, and took a GPS point of where the survey was completed. So we did a household survey of about 1,000 people in Matare, which has approximately about 150,000 people. And so this is a picture of one of our surveys doing a household survey. And this is a distribution of all of the surveys. So you see the methodology of doing a household survey this way was actually quite successful. So the survey had about 60 questions, a lot of them focusing on ICT and the way people use ICTs and their accessibility and availability and all of this stuff. Next, we did the stakeholder survey where we targeted, it was more than 40 groups which are dealing with waste management in this particular area. And we wanted to see, whether they use technology in any sort of way in coordinating their activities, maybe communicating with their partners and so on, because all of these were just assumptions which we tried to prove. What we found out, and this is just, we're still analyzing this data, but this is just the preliminary results that 93% of the people interviewed owned a mobile phone, which is above the national average of Kenya, but that's somehow understandable because it's an urban area and a very densely populated urban area, and despite it's a slum, it's still an urban area, and people here have better connection to these services than people in the rural areas, for example. Staggering 38% of the people can connect to the internet with their mobile phones, which was a kind of a surprising, but it's sort of an African average if you look at the statistics. And why they use the mobile phones was mostly for making calls, obviously messaging and Pesa, this being Kenya. An interesting fact is that almost 60% of the people still use mobile phones to listen to the radio. So the radio is still, in Africa, radio is still sort of king for getting information, especially amongst the most marginalized communities. Only 8% of the people own a computer, which is completely normal, but 38% of the people use computers. So you can, say, I didn't show you the demographics, but 2/3 of the people in Matare, almost 3/4 are below 35 years of age. So these are very young populations which live in these areas. And they are a little bit different than the older populations. They want to have mobile phones, they want to be connected. they're crazy about Facebook, as we'll see later. So most of the people access internet through cybercafes and mobile phones. So here it's only 33 groups, but we actually ended up with about 45 groups which are dealing on waste management. So these are the groups which are providing the service in the absence of the state, right? And you could do the same thing by looking at schools. Education is mostly provided by NGOs and other religious institutions or self-help groups. The same thing with clinics and so on and so on. So 31 out of 33 groups in this case, they use mobile phones to coordinate their activities. 28 out of 33 groups have smartphones, they have access to smartphones. And 29 out of 33 groups use the internet. So internet, the most famous the most used almost by anyone is Facebook, and WhatsApp is coming up extremely fast. So WhatsApp is very likely to surpass even the Facebook because it's cheap and it's very popular, and it's extremely popular in the slums here in Nairobi. So our conclusions, and this is also, I'm just telling you the way it's, so why I'm doing this is to sort of show you the way we approach things when we try to think about ICT4D. We look at the information systems that are first of all available before we try to go in, do something crazy, which is not going to work in the long run. But we found out that Matara as an informal settlement is as information-rich environment as any other in Kenya, that there are groups which are dealing with service provision which are different from the state, and that they are using technology for coordinating their activities, talking to their customers, even talking to some government representatives. So if I do this as if I was talking to, manner of a thesis, I would say that yes, the ICT can enable citizens to fill in some of the voids which is left there by the state. The tools are being used to facilitate coordination amongst groups, and ICT can hypothetically provide an alternative governance modality. Of course, there are various limitations to it. ICT, what we realized is, if I cite Professor Livingston and Walter Drop, is that it really depends on what the public good is. The ICT can be very useful in addressing the needs of public goods which rely heavily on communication and information, which is not surprising, right? So anything that has to do with data and communication and so on, the ICT, because the ICTs lower the cost of communicating and sharing information, are a perfect tool to address some of the issues there. So what are we going to do now? This is the big question. Are we still together?
Yeah. Yes.
So there was for the past couple of weeks within the organization, right, we do ICT4D, yes, but what do we actually do? Do we go down to the trenches now that we have all this information? We know what the groups lack. We know what the groups want. We know how to build, how to improve the waste management system in Mathara, basically. We have that information available. But do we actually go down to the trenches and try to solve some of these problems ourselves? As an ICT4D company, should we get involved in this or let somebody else do it? And should we just stay to, providing information, which was also one of the major issues from, the household survey and the stakeholder surveys, that people do not have access to the right information. Should we be just an information provider and, empower people through information, or should we actually go down to the trenches and try to solve some of these problems ourselves? So the conclusion was that we will go down to the trenches because we know what the problems are, we know how to solve them, and our whole goal is to sort of coordinate the activities around this problem. And by solving some of this problem, we will also be able to show that our methodology of collecting data and of analyzing this data is actually the right one if we are managed to prove that we have managed to solve some of the problems. So this is still in the conceptual phase, but we don't want to keep this data for ourselves. So we set up a bunch of social media tools which are the most used in Matare, and we will use them to disseminate information that we gather back to the community. So we want to close the feedback loop and see what the people think about this data. First of all, I mean, we can draw our own conclusions, but let the people decide. So we have Facebook group, we have Twitter group, we have WhatsApp group, we have a couple of blogs, we have hundreds of people on Facebook, we have hundreds of people on WhatsApp. So we're going to use these tools to disseminate the information, the analysis of this data back to the community and see what the community says. But what we realized is that people are not going to follow all of these tools, right? Nobody's going to follow Twitter and WhatsApp and Facebook and WordPress and all of this. So we're right now designing an app which is going to be a community-based app which will aggregate all of this information into one spot. And whoever has a smartphone, and a lot of people do, as we saw, will be able to just follow all of these outlets. Somebody posts to Facebook, somebody to WordPress, somebody to Twitter, whatever. Everything is going to show in one place, which is going to make our work easier to analyze the data, and it's going to make it easier for people to follow what's the story, what's the news, what's the conversation, around this certain issues. And we've already built also the network. So we have the MPs, we have the ward managers, we have the councillors on board, which represent the government side. We have the citizens, service providers on board, and we have these youth groups, which are basically service providers. So we did a survey amongst the government officials, and all of them have smartphones, not surprisingly. Actually, the government of Kenya bought a bunch of them tablets. And they're very eager to, start a conversation about around the major issues which are concerning their communities. And these are all the people which their connecting factor is the community that they live in, right? So we want to build them sort of like a news outlet where they can communicate with each other. An offshoot of this program was that when we were trying to figure out, what the major issues in the areas are, and we did the survey, and we were walking around, and some of our members, they started complaining about this particular dump site and about this particular houses that were burned down. They said, we don't want anyone to grab this land. There's not enough playgrounds in this community, which our survey also showed, that all the open spaces were used for dumping trash instead of for building playgrounds. So we said they self-organized sort of, and they claim the space, right? They just, it's an informal settlement. I mean, I have no idea how they did it, but they claimed the space. And what they did was they invested a lot of time and energy, and we helped them connect to various other organizations which provided them with material and some finances, and they built a football pitch in the middle of this community. And this is sort of when I'm saying down to the trenches, this is the sort of work that I see for ourselves as well, not just being a technology partner in all of this, but having access to all of this valuable information. We know who can get involved in order to solve a problem. We don't know how to build a football pitch, but somebody else did, and when we got them on board, they helped out. We don't know how to build a water system, but somebody else does. We don't know how to get rid of trash or recycle. We're not an experts in that, but somebody else does. And what we do and what our mission should be is find those people, get them connected, and let them solve one problem at a time. And thank you. This is it from me.
Thanks, Primož. I have a question about the application that you're building to put together information coming from Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp, and so on.
Yeah.
Is it an application that is specifically built only for this project, or it can be kind of like replicated or reused for other projects?
Yeah, well, the thing is, David Kutelek, so he's the guy and Ishwa, so they're the guys who are doing this actually. So there are some limitations about connecting all of this into one spot, but I'm not going to go into technical stuff because you can just follow up with them. But the idea is, because the Gates wants this to be a scalable solution, so for us, we want to do it in a way which can be scalable to other areas as well, you know. So, but you know, with the technology, the most important thing is always building the network around it. You know, the technology is just the enabling factor. So we built the networks already, the physical networks of people, right? And now we just need sort of a communication channel, which all of them sort of express that they want. But let's see, you know, they might use it, they might not, but unless we try it, we're never gonna know, you know. But yeah, it should be scalable to any other area, of course.
Okay. I'm going to follow up with you and with David, but it's very interesting for us because there's other places, like, for example, we've just finished, well, we've kind of finished a survey in Lebanon where we looked at how different communities were using communication systems, and we actually discussed about the possibility specifically of trying to link together like more commonly used social media like Facebook and Twitter, but specifically with WhatsApp, because WhatsApp is the biggest communication means that are using right now. And looking into creating different groups and so on, but specifically looking at how we can bring all of this together so that we don't have to have someone that it's automatic, like it's spending all day looking at Facebook and then Twitter and then WhatsApp and then the blog and whatever and wasting a lot of time. So I'm definitely interested in seeing what you guys come out with and if there's possibility for us to replicate that application depending on the areas of work.
Well, apparently all of these tools are very easy to connect, at least according to our technical team, right? The problem is WhatsApp, because WhatsApp doesn't have this sort of tagging that the other tools have, right?
Yeah.
But David and Isra, they have thought about it a little bit. They have some ideas. They did some research. So, yeah, it's better that you connect to them. And it would be interesting while we develop this tool, you know, to get as much input as we can, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Primož, I have a question about the data and the survey data that you gathered. I think you mentioned that, you know, the whole intent is to make the data available to government or to the service providers or even to the communities themselves. Can you say more about what you guys are doing with that?
Yeah, so the thing is, I mean, we've been working in this sort of areas for many years, you know, and organizations come, they collect data, and they never come back. You know, they never share the data with communities, and it's a big problem because people have become very skeptical. And so what we're doing, so we have the knowledge, and we have the funding, and so we feel as it's sort of our obligation to send back what we learn. So let's say, you know, we found out that majority of the people in the slum are young, and we compare that to other data sets which are available or information, and we compare Mathare, this particular slum, to the average in Kenya, for example, or education, or access to this or access to that. So we want to see where Mathare, this particular community, fends to the rest of the country or other communities, because people don't have this access right now. And you know, just I finished my graduate program right now, and a lot of professors are going to tell you, especially from development economics professors, is that they don't have data from these areas. They don't know, you know, what's going on. What is the you know, the background of these people? What is their, you know? So what we want to do is actually provide this information back to the communities and see what the reactions are going to be, basically. You know, saying that unemployment is higher here, or that people are less healthy, or all of this. I think people need to know this information, right? And we're going to share them, first of all, through all the social media, but our work is also very community-based. So just going back to the community and doing forums and having public discussions and documenting all of this feedback, right? Mm-hmm. So that.
I mean, pretty much in this process, do you feel that the community is kind of engaged? Because it's like, sometimes it's hard to think about, oh, if I come back to your community and tell you that 30% of the people in this community get more sick than the 20% of the people in the other community, kind of thing. It feels like a very non-practical or non-usable type of information? Like, how do you, because we've been talking a lot about how do you make this information relevant and useful for a specific community so that actually can use it to make decisions or just to understand better the area where they live or their own community. Like, how is this process going on? Because I know it's very hard, but I'm curious about how you guys are tackling that.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're right. It's all about how you communicate the data, right? And that's one of the reasons I went back to school, is because getting data is not hard, right? We've all done it before. I mean, it's, you know, you go, you do the survey, you get the data, but how do you communicate it, right, in order to make an impact? And, you know, that really varies, you know. I mean, the feedback, I'm going to tell you like this, the feedback was very positive, right? The people, they're really excited to see this information, and they're really excited to, especially because we don't just go there and show it to the people, right, and the communities, but we actually make it into an engaging process that we invite government officials, we invite the community, we invite everyone at the same forum, and we present this data to everyone. And even the government doesn't have this information about the slums, I'm sorry, but, you know, even their surveys are really bad, you know, and very unreliable, and they don't even, a lot of people don't even have ideas how they're gonna do the surveys there, you know. But it's, the conversations are always very lively, you know. But you know how it is, you know. The conversation is lively. It's the community forum. Everybody gets super excited, and the next day everybody forgets about it, right? So this has been the hard part, getting people to act, you know, especially maybe in the countries where that, you know, like civic engagement, it's not that strong. You need to change the whole behavior, you know, to get people actually move on things that they say. But eventually, you know, that's why we start with people who are willing to do things like build those football pitches, you know, and stuff like that. You know, you have to start with those who are serious, sort of.
I have one question.
Yeah, please.
Primož, I was wanting to see like how you have been able to make it sustainable. Like you'll go for the survey again and again because you have to update the databases, and also I mean, I don't know, you gave the mobiles, Android mobiles to the people and then they send you the information, or I mean, what is the process that you do? Because most of the people who are in the slum area, they may not have the ability to use the Android phones or the iPhone, the kind of thing. Just
well,
how you collect information from them.
Well, if you look at, you know, it's not a perfect process. I mean, we are addressing service provision in a certain country which should be dealt by that particular country, right? So if you look at the limitations that are right, I just skimmed through it, but one of them is sustainability of these projects, right? I mean, obviously we are a funded organization, we do a certain project, you know, and then, you know, if the funding runs out, you know, we're gonna move on, right? I mean, that's the nature of things, you know, but what I can tell you is that transferring knowledge. So I've trained hundreds of people in OpenStreetMap and GIS and collecting information and data, and some of them have jobs now, you know, some of them even work for the UN, and this is what we do. So we don't do these things ourselves. I don't do any of the surveys, any of the data collection. I don't do anything, and my partners, they don't do anything, but we employ communities to do this themselves, and we show them how to do everything, including making maps, and including making, you know, analysis and using different software and so on. Because, you know, in the long term, you're right, you know, it's not sustainable, but on the long term, if we train 5, 6, 7, 10 people, it might become sustainable after a while, you know, because they're gonna keep on doing it, you know. And there's actually people that I trained in Mathara, this particular community, who are right now, there's going to be an election in this particular constituency, and they're actually providing maps for, you know, which areas they're going to, you know, potentially vote for which candidate, and where is more, looking at different ethnicity in different villages and so on. And they're using a lot of the data sets that we've designed ourselves, but they're doing it themselves. Some of them are employed by the future elected officials to help them with social media campaigns, to help them with gathering information, doing the surveys, and so on. And this is sort of the sustainability that is there. But of course, running a project like that, it's not the most sustainable thing. So I agree with that.
Primož, sorry, there was one question in the chat that I missed. It's from Dylan, and he wants to know if you used Open Data Kit for crafting your survey app in Mathare for the householders.
Yes, we did actually. We did, and we actually, we promoted it on our blog when we wrote. Open Data Kit has some disadvantages actually. You need to you need to do some of your own tricks within, but we still use it because we're running another survey in a very remote rural area at the moment, looking at people, their plots, their land, how many resources they have, and all of this stuff. And we're using Open Data Kit there as well. Yeah, so we use Open Data Kit, yeah.
I think we are out of questions, finally.
Good.
So much. This is really interesting. Oh, one more question.
DJ's typing.
Yeah, Dylan, you can also say it verbally if you want. Okay. About the surprise popularity of radio on mobile. Is that FM or digital?
What's that?
The popularity of radio through mobile phones?
Hey guys, yeah. So I don't know if people can hear me. Primož,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes.
We do.
Okay. Hey, by the way, thank you for doing this. It's very cool to get someone to represent data about all these projects that you're doing in the field. I often don't get a chance to tune in for these kinds of events, so it's very cool. This is just a stray question about one of the things that you found about availability of ICT in Mathare. You mentioned that you were really surprised by the popularity of radio on mobile, and so I just wanted to ask if you could clarify. Do you mean that people are just picking up normal radio FM signals and using the phone as the tuner for that, or are they tuning into internet radio that from other locations?
Mm-hmm. No, they just use the mobile phone. So these mobile phones in Africa, especially the cheap ones, have sort of like an ability where they can just tune in. So they can just get it's like a sensor, sort of like your radio.
Okay.
So
it's just regular FM.
Exactly. You catch regular FM.
Cool. I wonder if there's a way to leverage that popularity for people who use it to reach out to if you think of broadcasters as a community also, to reach out to them, to have them point or encourage people to participate in forms of digital communication that for your platforms.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's a way of reaching a lot of people, definitely. I mean, the underlying issue here is access to information. These communities, they don't have that much access, so they do have some access, as we saw, but especially it's about news, so they usually can't afford a newspaper every day. But they can charge a phone, and they can listen to the radio. So it's the way of access. And also, why we're thinking about this building an app, which is going to have all this aggregate of different social media outlets in one place, is to sort of aggregate information about that particular area, because there's no news about Mathare. 150,000 people. The only time you're going to hear something about them, it's when there's gang violence or somebody dies or the place
Right.
burns down. You know? But there's very few information about the positive things which also happen, or about the issues that people face, or but they use some of these outlets exactly for that. So you'll hear them complaining on Facebook, you'll hear them complaining on WhatsApp a lot. So we just want to sort of create them like an aggregate where they can just have everything on one spot, you know.
If folks want to get more information about Spatial, where should they go?
You can just go on our site, which we actually have to update, but it's spatialcollective.com, or you can send me an email. You know, we can set up a Skype chat or whatever. We love company. We love talking to people.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.